All right, welcome everyone. Great to have all of you joining us today. We are going to hang out for just a minute or two to make sure that everyone can join and get settled in. We have an amazing guest today, so be sure to grab a drink and a snack so you don't miss a thing. Alan and I are coming to you from Bozeman, Montana, where we are having some lovely weather. I do think it was almost 70 degrees yesterday, so we're feeling pretty spoiled. Alan, big deal tomorrow, 10-year anniversary, birthday, whatever we're going to call it for XYPN. How you feeling?
It's exciting. It's unbelievable to look back and realize where we were 10 years ago, where we thought we'd be. It's been a really fun decade. It's
Yeah.
crazy to use that word.
I know. And then your birthday coming up, my 4-year work anniversary, obviously the most important anniversary coming up. And then you're having a baby to celebrate it all.
It's true. It's going to be a busy end of the quarter here and sort of the next quarter, but pretty excited for it.
Yes, lots of fun stuff. All right, perfect. Well, we're just past the hour, so I'm officially going to get us started. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Amy Arno, and I am the Director of Sales on the XYPN Business Development team. Today, I am thrilled to host this event, Ask Me Anything, with XYPN CEO and co-founder Alan Moore. I have just a few housekeeping items to go over. We will be using Slido today for our questions. So please head over to slido.com and use code XYPN. That'll get you started. You can upvote questions so Alan sees those first. So be sure to give the questions that you want answered some love. We did pre-populate it with some questions that were submitted during registration, so you can start upvoting right away. When the webinar is over, you will be able to fill out a survey in Zoom. We would love to hear how we did, and please also include topics that you would like to hear from us about in the future. We do host a free webinar every month. So next month, be sure to join us for Ask Me Anything, leaving a broker-dealer to launch an RIA, and that will be with XYPN members Marianne Nolte and Eric Nero. And this will be a great one, so be sure to register in the chat. Also, be sure to join us on April 23rd for a CE-eligible solution spotlight with Your Stake. Direct indexing, personalize your client experience with values-based investing in a tax-smart way. This is going to be a really informative session, so you won't want to miss out. And guess what? You can sign up for that in the chat. Last thing, we have a super exciting announcement to go along with our 10-year birthday tomorrow. We're going to kick it off with a chance to win a full year of standard membership. That's a value of over $6,000. So be sure to keep an eye on your inbox for how to enter to win. Okay, so before we head over to Slido, Alan, just maybe for anyone that hasn't heard your story, just want to share a little bit about your background and what brought you to launching XYPN.
Yeah, my background is I like to say I grew up in financial planning. I was fortunate enough to discover the degree of personal finance, or we called it family financial planning at the University of Georgia. So got my degree in financial planning, made me eligible to sit for the CFP during grad school, and then started working in some various RIAs. That led me to deciding to launch my own firm with a focus of working with next generation clients. I was 25 at the time and really had a passion for serving my peers. And got so many questions as it related to, really the core of what it takes to run a business. They teach you how to do the work of financial planning, but they don't teach you how to run a business. And so I got so many questions related to how do you do compliance, technology, like how do you get clients, like all these business oriented things. And so Michael Kitsis and I teamed up and decided we would launch a platform that would help advisors start, run, and grow their own RIA. As you mentioned, Amy, that was 10 years ago tomorrow, which is incredible to say, but it's been a ton of fun, and we've helped way more people than I ever thought possible, and really excited to see what we can do over the next decade.
Yes. And safe to say thousands. We have over 1,800 members in the network right now, so it's pretty great. Like, okay, well, Audrey, I think you can stop sharing your screen. I'm going to head on over to Slido and get started on that. Okay.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar with Slido, it's just a way that you can ask questions and upvote, and whichever question has the most upvotes will rise to the top. So you are welcome to ask questions. Also, just sort of look and see if there happen to be questions that are similar to your question. Just upvote the one that you have. So while everyone is sort of getting in here and sort of getting started with upvoting, we'll kick off a poll, a new feature in Slido, which is really exciting. So if you have not yet launched, just curious, your time, well, I guess, sorry, if you've already launched here. So what is your timeline for launching a firm? If you sort of have an idea of if you're going to, maybe not sure, you've already launched, or if it's, less than 6 months to a year, 1 year plus. Helps me sort of know where everyone's at as I'm answering questions, sort of cater it. If you're a year or 2 or 3 years out from launching a firm, it's a little different than if you've already launched, which is a little different than if you're launching tomorrow. So give it
However,
just a minute.
I'm not sure.
Okay. So in the next quarter, I got it.
Perfect.
Well, hopefully today we'll give you some insight into maybe where you're at and your level of preparedness. Our philosophy here at XYPN is to never push someone into launching a firm. We are not selling widgets here that you can just throw away. We're selling the concept, the idea of entrepreneurship and helping support you in that journey. And I'd much rather you wait and launch next year and have a successful run at it than launch too early and ultimately not find that success. So with that, I'll just start reading from the top and we'll work our way down. So starting at the top, if you could only give one piece of advice to advisors launching a new firm, what would it be? So, for folks who know my story, you would know this, but like I'm very much a do as I say, not as I do, because I launched my own firm back in 2012, and there was this concept of niche marketing didn't exist yet. And so, or it did exist, but it was a pretty niche thing. It was a pretty small number of advisors that had committed to a niche. It was Kristen Harrod out of California that had a firm for new parent finance. And I remember people being like, how do you find enough clients with this really specific niche of having a child under the age of 5 or expecting? And she's like, do you realize how many consumers fit into that niche market? And she built a really successful firm. She's ended up pivoting into doing marketing for financial advisory firms because she was so successful. And so I would say the number one recommendation I have, if you're thinking about starting a firm, if anytime, and this could be like, hey, I know I'm going to start a firm in 10 years. I know that's my long-term plan, but maybe not today. Or like, hey, I'm ready to get started. What do I do? It is all about eyeballs. It is all about business development. And the fastest way to get traction, in my opinion, and based on the data that we collect, either through the kitces.com platform or through XYPN's annual benchmarking survey, is to get really, really, really clear about who you serve and why. And the more clear you can get about that, the easier it is for clients to understand why you're the right fit. It becomes much more clear when a center of influence should send you a client referral instead of someone else. And it allows you to really focus your marketing efforts because if you just say like, hey, I work with Gen Y, where should I market? I'm like, oh my gosh, the options are unlimited. But if you can tell me like, hey, I specifically work with, female executives and pre-IPO tech companies that are approaching IPO. Okay, well, where they hang out is going to be pretty specific, and you can get targeted there. So that would be my advice. See, I don't have a background in marketing, and I'm nervous about this. Where should I start? If I join XYPN, what resources do you have for marketing? Yeah, I never had a marketing role either before I started a firm. Part of being a business owner is that being an entrepreneur, particularly when you're a solo, is that you wear all the hats. You will be the marketer, you'll be the operations, you'll be the sales, you'll be the delivery, customer service, and you'll be the janitor. That's the reality. It's what can be really fun and exciting. It's also terrifying. Like I don't want to underplay that, but it is something that you have to have a really broad skill set or be willing to bring folks in or maybe have the financial resources to bring people in early on. Marketing is, I think, there's a lot of misconceptions about marketing. And, when you're first starting a firm, you don't need to be going out and running a bunch of Google ads and spending a bunch of money. And, there will be more opportunities than you know what to do with to put your logo in the local bulletin at a church or whatever the things are. Like there's so many opportunities. The list is overwhelming in terms of it's basically an infinite number of opportunities. And so that's why, sort of reiterating, you're going to hear the word niche quite a bit today, because a lot of these questions, it's hard for me to answer without saying, well, what's your niche? And that is, if you can get really, really clear on your target market, you can get really clear on who you serve, then it becomes much easier to build a marketing plan that you can execute, even being a non-marketer, even being someone who doesn't have a background in marketing, to be able to execute. And so Just thinking of some of the interesting ones that client niches that our advisors have. We have one advisor that works with Catholics. He's Catholic. He works with clients who are part of the Catholic faith. It's really easy for him to target like folks who are Catholic. Like you go to mass and you talk to people, and you talk to people who are in that world, who are centers of influence. Maybe you talk to the priests, that sort of thing. We have another advisor who works with Chick-fil-A franchise operators. Right, he knows how to get in front of Chick-fil-A franchise operators. In fact, it's so specific that Daniel gets invited on the Chick-fil-A operator cruise that Chick-fil-A hosts, and they charter 2 Carnival boats and take them out in the Caribbean. And he goes and hangs out and gives finance presentations because that's where his market is. Like that would be a terrible use of my week, is to go market to a bunch of Chick-fil-A operators, but it's a wonderful way for Daniel to do it. So I would encourage you, don't get stressed about not having a background in marketing. You probably don't have a background in most of the things that you're going to be doing. Most of us started a firm with our background being how to do financial planning, and then we had to learn the business side. The other thing I'll say is that there are so many free resources on this now. There's so much training and education. We have a lot of this through XYPN. You can go to Udemy. I mean, you just go to YouTube and pick up Digital Marketer is another one that I'm a big fan of, that have all these tools and resources to help you get in front of the clients that are prospective clients that you want to be in front of. All right, next up, in a fee-for-service model, how do you ensure an ongoing client relationship when services may not be needed on an annual basis? What value adds are you seeing? There are, depending on your target market and who you're serving and what their needs are, you may work with clients who don't need to meet with you on a regular basis or on a quarterly or semi-annual cadence. There are some clients who are really well served by one-time financial plans. There's some that are served really well by modular financial planning arrangements. If I'm sitting here with you and I say, if you are an advisor who works with clients who have a kid in high school that's college bound and you want a college plan, we don't need to meet about that every quarter for the next 10 years, because in the next 3 years, my kid's going to be in college. And so these decisions are going to have been made. So maybe that is a one-time engagement, or we meet a couple of times over those years and then that engagement's over. There may be others that just want you to do a student loan analysis, or something very sort of finite, and you're building that plan. In my opinion, obviously, I'm a big fan of comprehensive financial planning. I believe that the ongoing relationship is extremely valuable. I have a master's in financial planning. My wife has a degree in financial planning, and we have our own financial planner. So I truly believe that the value that advisors provide, and I do believe that value is in an ongoing relationship. That being said, that's just not where some clients are at. That's not what they need. It's not what they want. It's not what they're willing to pay for. And that's okay. I'm a big fan of sort of meeting prospective clients where they're at, and trying to ultimately, meet, again, to sort of serve the client and provide the services that they're looking for on an ongoing basis. Sort of what's the value that you see? The reality is, Carl Richards has a great picture of this. And it's like me, and then my advisor, and then stupid. So my advisor is between me and stupid. And I don't mean for that to be crude. Like, that's the reality with my financial advisors. I go to make a lot of really stupid decisions, and my advisor's like, hey, how does this relate back to the goals that we talked about in our last meeting? Okay, Jake, thanks. But that's the value that advisors provide. It's not so much, we are not the holders of all this magical information. We are not, anyone can go to Google and get the answers or get the information. What we are is about helping clients really understand and identify their goals. What is their why? What are they trying to accomplish? And then make good decisions in order to accomplish those goals. I don't care if you can beat the market by 1%, 2%, 3%. You can add that alpha over time. If your client sells at the bottom of the market, they're done. Like, they will not meet their financial goals. That extra % or 2% would have been a failure. And I'm not even a big believer in being able to beat the market, but even if that's your strategy. And so I would say it's all about being there with your client through life, every step of the way, because in the end, life just happens. Stuff changes quickly, particularly when you're working with younger clients. Life happens really fast. And so there's a ton of value that you can provide to your clients in that ongoing relationship. What is the main reason new RIA owners fail, how to avoid? It's a great question. So when we look at our data related to when members go to leave XYPN, they have a little exit survey that they fill out and give us some information. And I will say that probably the number one reason that we see RIA owners ultimately decide to shut down their firm is because they really just do not enjoy running a business. Maybe they built it up in their head in terms of like what it was going to be, and then they got into it and they're like, you know what, I really don't like wearing all the hats, and I don't want to scale a big team. So maybe I'd rather go be part of a team. To me, it's hard for me to call that failure, just because I think that self-discovery in that process of figuring out what you want to do, and maybe you want to be an RIA owner for 5 years, 10 years, but then you want to go do something else. All of those are acceptable, and so that is probably the number one reason why folks ultimately shut down their firm is they just don't enjoy running the business. It's one of the reasons that we've launched XYPN Sapphire, our new corporate RIA offering, is to help those advisors who really just don't want to do the back end work of compliance and technology and all of their E&O insurance policy renewal. They just kind of want that done for them. So we're trying to meet those advisors where they're at. In terms of actually fail to grow, generally I see that it is because folks are not clear, advisors are not clear on who they want to serve. They have a really, really broad niche, or not even a niche, a really broad client profile. If you go to an About Me page and it says, we work with individuals, families, business owners, women, and trusts, it's like no woman has ever gone to that website and been like, oh, yay, they work with people like me. Like, it's just too broad. Like, literally that encompasses every human. And so if the advisors who aren't willing to sort of put their stake in the ground and say, this is who I serve, the fear of that can really hold them back. And I would say also just a lack of education and experience. We do see success from folks who have 10 years of experience in another industry, career changing into financial services and getting started from scratch. But for those who are, graduating from college and think about starting their own firm, the success rate of folks in their early to mid 20s is very, very low. The number of, I think the median age of an XYPN member is like 42, but the number of members that we have in their 20s is just a handful. It's just not a lot of folks. Because in the end, the hardest part of the business is being around long enough for it to work. And so you can go get a new client a month, but if you don't have enough savings, you don't have enough money in the bank to be able to sort of last you until you get to 20 clients, 30 clients, and see that revenue coming in every month or quarter, then ultimately you don't make it. So I guess that would be my final point, is just being sure you have enough financial runway, whether that's savings in the bank, it's a loan, it's a partner or a spouse that has an income stream, a side hustle, because it's not the business expenses that'll get you, it's the personal expenses. It's the mortgage, the car payment, the daycare costs, the health insurance. And so being sure that you've got a plan for how are you going to pay for, those expenses for the next 2 to 3 years, because that's how long it takes. Even when you're super fast out of the gate, it still takes 2 to 3 years, according to our data, and just being sure that you have the financial resources to make it that long.
Alan, real quick before we move on to the next one, because this is a question I get asked a lot in talking to future members, is what kind of metrics do you put in place as like, this is when I'm going to stop? Like, do you have recommendations of that, of like, if I'm on year 3 of losing money, or if I'm now 20,000 in debt, I don't know. Do you have anywhere where you suggest people like, okay, I really need to seriously think about wrapping this up and moving on to a different opportunity?
Good question. Everyone's answer is going to be different, because part of it is getting really clear on why you launched a firm in the first place. So we have a lot of advisors. Part of what is unique about XYPN is that we are very supportive of the solo practice. And so we've got a lot of advisors who say, I want to work 20 hours a week. I want to be the on-call parent. I want to take summers off. We had one advisor on the podcast that her passion was improv comedy, and she wanted as much time as possible for improv. And then she was running her business. And I'm trying to remember the numbers, but I think she was making like $20,000 or $30,000 a year. And that was like awesome for her. That was exactly what she wanted to build. And so if you're telling me like, hey, I've got to make $1 million a year, I won't be happy, versus I want to build a big team, versus I want to help this particular client base, versus I want this, flexibility, those goals will sort of dictate those metrics for yourself. I would not set some target, 3 years out and say, if we haven't hit this number, I have failed. I would say, really get clear on your why. Why is it that you're starting a firm? What do you hope to accomplish for yourself and your family? and then start working on I would say try to build annual goals for yourself of, hey, I want to get to this many clients, and then ask yourself, what do I need to be working on this quarter, next quarter, in order to achieve those goals. And I'll say, like, also sort of surround yourself with trusted peers and friends. Partners can sometimes be great for this. Sometimes partners can be really challenging to, like a spouse or a significant other can be really challenging, just because they're sort of feeling the pain with you. And so try to get that objective third party view. Maybe that's from a study group, to say, like, hey, this just isn't working. Like, what do I need to do to get sort of the momentum back? And so there are a few different ways I would do this, but I don't think there's any metric of like, oh, you're losing money or you're not making as much as you wanted in year 3, you need to be done. I will say, if you set any metrics that are like, I must do this in the first year to be successful, I would just encourage you, do not launch yet. Because if you need, and I had an advisor say, like, I need to make 100, I need to be at 100,000 in annual recurring revenue by the end of the year. I'm starting from scratch. The answer is absolutely not. Do not do that to yourself. Go work a job for the next 3 to 5 years, save up enough money so you can tell me you need to be at 100,000 in ARR in year 3 or year 4, then we can start talking. So I would say, just be careful putting yourself in a situation where you have to be overly aggressive with your goals and set sort of unrealistic expectations that, candidly, it's just, unless you're a unicorn, and we have a few of them, but unless you're a unicorn, it's not possible.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. What are the issues of having other business activities, such as business consulting or financial counseling, commingled with the standard RIA advisory services? So I will preface this by, please speak to your compliance expert, your compliance consultant. We have an awesome compliance team here at XYPN, so I will answer the question as they have answered it for me over the years. But you're welcome to reach out to them or your own compliance consultant to get more specifics. The issue generally comes with anything underneath the RIA registration umbrella is auditable by your state or SEC regulators. And so anything that's running through your books, anything that is being handled by the entity that is registered as an RIA. So, I guess take a step back. You will have an entity, let's say it can be a sole prop, it can be a partnership, an LLC, corporation, and then that entity is registered as a registered investment advisory firm. You have to do that in order to give investment advice. Anything that entity does is technically auditable by your regulator. Now, it doesn't mean they'll have an opinion about it. If you're doing speaking engagements, they may or may not care, but they can say, hey, we want to see a recording or we want to see the slide deck from that presentation. If you are doing debt coaching or student loan coaching, or you're writing a book, the regulators have the right to go pull the information related to that. And so generally what we see is advisors will separate their business activities simply for simplicity's sake, if you will. Some will separate their tax practice. If they offer tax planning and tax preparation from financial planning, they'll have 2 entities, which means 2 different agreements with a client and 2 different payments, but they're working together. But a lot of it is for simplicity of the regulatory environment versus any legal reason. I mean, there's nothing saying an RIA can't go write a book. It just means that there's going to be additional scrutiny. And so, like here at XYPN, XY Planning Network is not a registered RIA. We're just a C Corp now. Used to be an LLC. We're just a C Corp. We're not registered as an RIA, but we have a subsidiary that is registered as an RIA. That's now XYPN Sapphire, was previously XYPN Invest, our in-house TAMP. So we own an entity that has an RIA registration, but we didn't want a regulator to come in to do a Sapphire audit and then be asking our membership team or our marketing team, hey, tell me about what you're doing over here at XYPN for these advisors, just because it's not part of their purview. And honestly, it's just a huge waste of everyone's time. So that's generally why I see this happen. That being said, just be cognizant that if you're doing commissioned activities for financial products in that other entity, then that would disqualify you from the definition of fee only as set by the CFP board. So you can kind of look at, like, what are you doing over there, and does that meet that standard? Because just remember, fee only is actually a firm level definition and includes all activities by anyone who works at the firm, inside the firm or outside the firm. So if you're selling real estate on the side or doing investment, doing investment policies, or something like that, then just know that you'll run afoul of the CFP's definition of fee only, which is what we use here at XYPN. All right. What are the main things that you should understand or plan for about entrepreneurship to make the decision to launch? Budget, health insurance, amount of savings. Yeah, these are all awesome things. I think the number one, according to sort of more broad-based data for all industries, the number one thing holding back folks from entrepreneurship is health insurance, which is really unfortunate, but it is the reality. We have worked really hard. I have spent more time trying to get our members health insurance than probably any other project that I've ever had that was not successful. So it's really hard because it's state by state. There are a lot of rules and regulations and things you have to do. But yes, health insurance is really important. Being sure you have a couple of years of savings, so ideally, or a stable stream of income, so that you can have enough runway to be here in year 3 when things really start clicking. The other thing I would say in terms of preparing is about the social side. So obviously, it's easy to point to the financials and say, yes, I have enough money. But when I say the social side, I mean, who around you is going to be the moral support when things get really tough? Even the most successful financial planners, the most successful business owners, that from the outside you're just like, oh my gosh, you're doing amazing, this is so good. Inside it's turmoil, it's a roller coaster, it just is. That is entrepreneurship. And so Jude Boudreau, an advisor out of Louisiana, used to say that entrepreneurship was the highest highs and the lowest lows all in the same day. And so you're going to have that prospect that you've been waiting for is going to sign up the same day you get denied for some award, or a client fires you. Like, those two things generally happen like 2 hours apart. And so then you go home and you're like, oh my gosh, the most amazing thing and the most terrible thing happened to me today. What do I do with this information? And so, again, if I take a step back, if you are in a long-term committed relationship with a partner, you both need to be on the same page. If your partner is not supportive of you launching a firm, I can pretty much guarantee you that either your firm will fail or your relationship will fail. You have to be on the same page, because your entrepreneurial journey, your roller coaster, will impact your partner whether you like it or not. And so, I remember talking to one advisor whose partner sort of set like, well, you have to have 20 clients before you can launch your firm, and then you have to have 30 at this point, or I'm not going to be supportive. And instead of 30, he was at like 28, and his partner's like, see, I told you this wasn't going to work. That's really hard as the entrepreneur, because that's when you're at your low. And when you're low and someone kicks you, and they're not doing it to be mean, they're doing it because maybe their risk tolerance is a lot lower than yours. Their need or desire for safety from an income perspective or health insurance maybe higher than yours, and that's okay. So again, get on the same page as your partner if you're in a relationship, and then surround yourself with your moral support. That may be your partner if they're very supportive. Again, that's a study group. I credit the only reason I'm standing here today is because of the study group I was in when I launched my RIA. And so those advisors they were instrumental in helping me navigate those highs and those lows and the challenges I was having. And just that thought partner to be able to bounce ideas around and sort of talk through the different things that we were experiencing. Like that's what saved me. That's what gave me the opportunity to be successful. And so I would also encourage you, like, look for your peers, look for a study group. We help form study groups, and we'll get you in one if you're an XYPN member. Some people are in multiple study groups. Some you have the accountability group, and then you may also have more of a niche sort of identity group. Like, hey, we work with clients with stock options, and so that study group gets together every week or two and just talks stock option research, which is awesome if that's your thing. And so there are a lot of different ways to get that. So long-winded answer to your question, but I think that those are the things when I'm thinking about entrepreneurship. It's about having enough runway and having the moral support. Because even when things are going really well, you're going to need that pick me up from time to time.
Perfect. I did want to plug really quick on, I know you hosted a conversation with a couple of members, I think it was December of 2022, called Are You Sure? How to Have the Conversation with Your Partner About Entrepreneurship, because it's a very nuanced dynamic that you want to approach thoughtfully. So I'm sure Audrey can drop the link for us for that, if you want to go check that out, if that's something that you want more questions and advice on. So thanks, Alan.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. All right, hear more about launching under XYPN RIA. I'm assuming if I'm getting this wrong, then maybe just ask the question a different way in the with the next question. But I'm assuming this is referencing our corporate RIA XYPN Sapphire, which is a newer offering where we now have an RIA that our advisors can sort of attach to. So historically, where we started 10 years ago and we're still at today, is that if you choose to join XYPN, you want to launch your own firm, we will walk you through the launch process. We have experts on the team. We got a lot of team members who focus on this, from compliance to business coaching to the technology resources to the community resources to get you in the study group like I was talking about earlier. And so during that process, you will launch your own RIA. You will be registered. You will be the CCO and the CEO of your RIA. And so we would say you have an RIA and you're the IAR, the investment advisor representative of your registered investment advisory firm. I don't know why they just keep using the same letters over and over in different orders. And so that is that model. And what we found was that works for the majority of our advisors, because that's what we offered. That's who was attracted to our service offering, were those who had a pretty good, who wanted to be their own RIA. And then we have started to find that there are some advisors who are like, hey, this is great, but I would rather just not have to think about compliance. I don't want to have to think about IT support and keeping my systems integrated. I want to be able to take a vacation and not have to worry that, I've got trading authority for my clients. And so I have to be available to trade on their accounts. Very few solo advisors, solo entrepreneurs ever really get to take parental leave or vacation or sabbatical. It's really challenging because of the responsibilities that we have to our clients. And so that's where our corporate RIA is called XYPN Sapphire. That's what Sapphire was born out of. So we are in sort of a pilot phase right now. We announced at our conference back in September, October, that we were sort of evaluating this as an option. We launched back in January and now have 6 advisors who are on the platform, who are signing clients up and using our systems and all that. So we're building a lot of things as we go, but we just want to give another avenue for someone who says, hey, it's great that you give me the opportunity to do all these things. Thanks for the DIY model, which is really what XYPN has historically provided. I just want you to do it for me. Could you just do it for me? I don't have to deal with this. I don't want to set up my wealth box. I don't want to set up, planning software. I don't want to set up my investment accounts. Great. That's what we're here for. And if at any time you're like, yeah, I want to go start my own RIA, fantastic. There's a button in the portal. You go push the button and you start the registration process, and you can do that. So we are equally supportive if you want to continue to start your own RIA or join XYPN's corporate RIA offering. It's intended to be a platform for those that's the right fit for, but similar to entrepreneurship, we would never try to force someone onto one platform or the other. It's really a personal decision. So just as a reminder, you can come in and ask questions. If you upvote, it'll rise to the top. So, and with right now, I think we're at 3 upvotes on some of these. So it doesn't take long for you to get something boosted. So it looks like there's 11 questions. So you can kind of scroll down and see what all is there. Let's see, what are the common pitfalls you see advisors experience in their first year? So when I launched my firm, I saw this with myself. I saw this with my peers, and then I have seen this over time. And that is that we are so quick to spend our time focusing on the wrong things. We are perfectionists. We want the client experience to be perfect. We want the technology to be perfect. We want the client portal set up correctly. We want the data flowing from our CRM to our planning software and filling out the forms automatically. And we forget that the most important thing is you need to go out and get clients. So in technology, we call, there's a common phrase called Wizard of Ozing it. And Wizard of Ozing it is basically so that it looks good to the client. From the client's perspective, it's great, but to whoever's behind the curtain is doing a lot of manual work. And so you don't need an automated system to open an IRA when you have one client. Okay, you just don't. You can spend the hour to manually fill out that paperwork. I know it's not your favorite use of time. It's not mine either. But otherwise, you're going to spend 30 hours trying to automate the process instead of actually just going out and getting that client. So I would say the common areas that I see advisors, sort of struggling is sort of getting things set up, spending all their time focusing on operations and systems and process, and then sort of waiting for the phone to ring. While you may get lucky and that phone may ring a couple of times, those early days are all about getting eyeballs, for the right prospective clients for your firm. And so not spending enough time focused on business development activities, both in balancing short-term and long-term, centers of influence for your particular target market, that may be a little bit longer of a turnaround time from when you meet with them to when you get a client. Content can be maybe a quicker thing, or maybe it takes a long time. So you need to be balancing sort of short-term, midterm, long-term opportunities. But spend the time. Don't worry about like signing up for the next tech tool or the next system. Just I see advisors who, they're like, okay, well, XYPN provides Wealthbox as my CRM, but I'm going to go demo all 12 CRMs on the kitces.com tech map and see which one I like best. Don't do that. Just use what we're giving you, not because we don't get paid by Wealthbox. Like, we're paying Wealthbox on your behalf. And so we're not biased in this. We just want to make the decision process really easy for you. So you don't have to make all those decisions. You can go out and get clients. And if in 5 years, you've built a successful firm and you want to move to Salesforce, totally fine. You can make that transition then. But really focus your efforts, especially in those early days, on business development, driving new business, driving eyeballs to your firm, and be sure you're in front of the right people. In light of yesterday's talk with Bob Barras, how will advice remain scalable and accessible for the mass market if the AUM model is on the way out? So I don't believe that the AUM model is on the way out. So my interview with Bob was to get his perspective and how, basically what he sees in the future. I did, I'm on record, I think 10 years ago, saying in 10 years, the fee for service model will be the dominant way that that clients pay for financial advice. I was very wrong about that prediction. And the truth is I've really learned and sort of seen over time that AUM is not going anywhere. AUM, and I'm not one, I don't put ethics or morality on fee structures, even commission products. Some people think I'm like very anti-commissions. I'm not. I'm all about fiduciary. If I could rename fee only, it would be called fiduciary only, because that's what I care about. I care that we are fiduciaries to our clients and that we can be held accountable for that. And so there are different service models or different fee structures that support different service models that support different target markets. And AUM is a wonderful fee structure if you are working with clients who have assets and are willing to delegate the asset management to you. The challenge with that is that that's a very small portion of Americans. Something like 7 or 8% of Americans have $500,000 or more in investable assets waiting for you as the advisor to manage it. Only about 1/3 of them are delegators and are willing to even let you do this on their behalf. So really, advisors have been kind of fighting over like 2% of the American population and leaving the other, let's say 48% from median household income and up, sort of leaving that other 48% out in the dark. And so I don't think of fee for service, which there's different ways of saying this. We say fee for service, but Cerulli calls these non-traditional fees. So anything non-AUM, non-commission. And so that could be hourly, retainer, subscription, flat fee, project fee. There's a lot of ways to structure that. But ultimately, it is not about replacing AUM. It is about creating and offering a fee model that allows you to work with a client who couldn't access your services before. So let me take a step back in terms of, again, 12 years ago when I was launching my own firm. One of my first prospective clients came to me, and she had interviewed 7 different financial advisors, fee-only advisors that she had found through NAPFA there in Milwaukee, and all of them turned her away. They all said, "We don't work with clients like you." And so I asked the question. I always like to say, like, what has caused you to come like talk to me? Like, what what has caused you to want to come talk to a stranger about money? And her answer did not answer the question, but she just said, "I just am hoping you'll actually work with me." I'm like, well, that's a weird thing. So let's dig in. So the client profile was, she was 34, 35 years old, was single, an anesthesiologist making $550,000 a year. I did not know people could make that much money. But she had just paid off $250,000, $250,000 in student loan debt in the last 12 months and wanted to save that $250,000 every year until she could retire because she hated her job. For most advisors, and the 7 advisors she went and talked to, the AUM model simply meant they couldn't get paid to work with her because they were going to, 1% of nothing, It's not a very good business model. And so she didn't have any assets to manage. So their 1% AUM fee just didn't work. And so that is a client who I was able to provide a ton of value to. And then ultimately my firm got bought by a larger firm when I transitioned over full-time to XYPN. And I believe they continue to work with her today. And so there's just immense value for that client, but I had to have a different fee model. I had to have a different fee structure. And at the time I was charging a net worth and income calculation. So she was paying me like $5 or $6 grand a year, which I was thrilled with, just starting out. And I was able to really provide a lot of value to her. So I will say AUM is not the core business model for the mass affluent. If your target market is mass affluent, you're going to have to use a different fee structure because they literally just don't have the assets to support an asset-based fee. And so you're really looking at, okay, do they have the income to support a more income-based fee or a fee that's paid out of cash flow, such as hourly or subscription? And so those will be the markets there. I do remain curious, interested in whether or not financial planning is ever something that is accessible to the masses. This is not something that I ever foresee the government or an insurance company paying for. And no matter how much value I see from it, it's really, it's really, really, really hard to get somebody to come talk to a stranger about money. It's like the last taboo in our culture is, if you want to test this, like ask your parents what their net worth is, or ask your best friend, like how much money they make. And, usually it's like, it's like so uncomfortable. And so those are tough conversations. And so there's just going to be a big group of folks who never want to access what we're doing. And that's okay. So I'm not sure if financial planning ever truly reaches the middle market. If it does, it certainly will look nothing like our current service model. So it won't look anything like what we do today. It will have to be a different service model, have to be a different delivery mechanism. Maybe it's a one-to-many or a one-to-few type format. It'll have to be technology enabled, and it will just be a fundamentally different service. So hopefully that answers that question. How should buyers evaluate launching their own RIA, tucking under an RIA, or buying an existing book of business? Yeah, you sort of summed it up. These are the three options that you have when you're thinking about going independent and deciding what you want to do. I'll say in terms of, let's just start with, I'll go backwards. Let's start with, buying an existing book of business. There are some people who really love starting something from scratch, and there are others who really prefer to have something that's kind of working already. Buying a book of business is a wonderful way to get started. You can leverage debt to be able to buy the practice. Depending on the situation, the owner may be available to help with the transition, all the things. But also, it's pretty expensive to buy a firm. And so, if you're trying to buy a firm that makes $500,000 a year, you may be paying, I don't know, $1.5 million, maybe up to $2 million, depending on the client, sort of the demographics and all of that. And so you may be paying quite a bit for that. And then the question becomes, do you want to buy the book of business that you're buying? Is that your ideal market? I remember when I had my firm, I would get, the brokers would call me and be like, hey, are you interested in purchasing a book of business? And I was like, is somebody with a client base in their 30s and 40s selling their practice? The answer was no. It was it was advisors with clients in their 70s and 80s because they were in their 70s looking to sell, and that just wasn't my target market. So buying an existing book is great. I will caution you to be wary. It does work out sometimes, but be wary of the promised succession plan, the unsigned succession plan, I should say. Many of us were in situations where we were promised equity. We were promised, hey, one day I'll sell you the firm. And then, I'll sell you the firm in 5 years. And then 7 years in, there's been no movement on it. Suddenly we're not having that conversation anymore. It's an uncomfortable thing. Those are really challenging situations. And so when you think about buying a book of business, the way I was answering this at first is literally, I'm just going to pay you for your business. Others would say like, I'll come in here and work for 10 years and take over the practice. That can work. There are some success stories. But XYPN members, we got about 1,800 members, and probably 1,700 of them were part of a failed succession plan, would be my guess, that just didn't ultimately work out. So then, if we're looking at, okay, if I could acquire a business, great, but if I don't find the right business, what do I do? I think the big difference between launching your own RIA or tucking under another RIA is how much autonomy you want. When you join somebody else's RIA, you are going to give up some autonomy. You just have to. It is part of being able to scale that business and oversee a lot of different advisors across the country. So when you go to launch your own firm, you make all the decisions. You decide what CRM, you decide what clients you want to work with, you decide which E&O provider you want to work with. You're the one who decides you don't want E&O insurance. I don't recommend it, but you make those decisions. You decide if you work from home or work from an office. All of these things are your calls. And for some folks, that's great. That's exactly what they're looking for is I want the autonomy to build the business that I want to build. Others say, hey, that's all great, but like, I don't really care about any of that. What I care about is that maybe there's this like certain client base that I'm really passionate about serving. Maybe I have a fee model that I believe is more ethically sound or better aligned for my target market than where, my previous firm was at. In those cases, then tucking underneath an RIA may make a lot of sense. My caution would be that if you're tucking underneath an RIA, that my advice would be that you join an RIA, that this is what they were purpose built to do. This is their core offering, is supporting advisors underneath an RIA. It's basically a corporate RIA structure. Where I do see a lot of challenges are the folks who it's like, I'm running my practice and this one advisor wants to sort of tuck under me and I'll provide some back office support. Those situations we see not generally working out because it wasn't what the firm was built for. And so it's really hard to support sort of this side business of supporting this one advisor while you're trying to serve your clients. And I promise that when you're tucked into an existing firm and it's just a couple of advisors, when that advisor's clients send in an email and your client sends in an email, they will answer their client's email first. So that's why I encourage you to look for a platform that this is what they do. They are a corporate RIA. There are, we have one. There are others out there, and look for those situations. And again, it's not saying it never works. It's just saying that we definitely see it. I'm a big fan of having a niche, right? So like have a platform that you are their niche. You are their target market. You are not their largest customer. You are not their smallest customer. They know how you operate. They already have a system in place. How many years of experience do you think someone needs before starting their own RIA? So I guess there's sort of two ways that folks come to this. One is just how many years of experience in financial services. I started my RIA after having about 2 years of planning experience, and I really wish I had had more. Again, I was 25 when I started my own firm, and I don't recommend that path for anyone. I wish I would have waited a little bit longer. I got fired from my last job, so I kind of got pushed into it and just decided I didn't want to move across the country for a third time to take a job. And so I ended up doing it earlier than I normally recommend. But we generally see, 8 to 10 years of experience is really when advisors start to feel like they've got this thing down. They know the planning process. They know how to talk to clients. They know how to go get clients. They understand the industry. They can answer questions. Like it just takes time to get there. And so 8 to 10 years is sort of what I see. For folks who are graduating with a degree in financial planning, I rarely see them launch a firm before they hit 30. Like that's just for a variety of reasons, both experience as well as financial. The other group that's kind of interesting are the career changers. And so these are folks who have spent the last 10, 20, 30 years in a different industry. I'm a nuclear engineer and I've decided to retire and then start my own and then I want to get into financial planning. That is the one group of people that we see build very successful businesses with no actual planning experience. So a couple of years ago at XYPN Live, our national conference, I was moderating a panel with 3 different advisors. And I didn't realize until we got into the conversation that all 3, we were sort of showcasing really fast growth niche firms. And all 3 of those firms, the first financial plan they ever delivered to a client was done so through the RIA that they owned. So all 3 of them, they had never worked in financial planning. They had never done financial planning for a client until they actually delivered that first plan inside their RIA. Now, how do you do that, right? It's not my favorite because I want you to be sure you're competent and ethical and you know how to do what you're doing. But if you've gone out, you've gotten the CFP education, you know the nuts and bolts and want to start your own firm, that's where we see firms be successful because they have a really clear target market. Usually it's the industry they came from. So, when I was thinking about nuclear engineer, we've got one advisor that works with nuclear engineers and has 75 clients and building an amazing business. And his first clients were their were clients of the firm. I don't think he had any prior advisory work experience. And those advisors can be successful. Now, some of us are also just like wired to dive into the deep end and learn how to swim. Others prefer to walk in from the shallow end. And so, success, one of the other interesting things is we highlight, sort of as a culture, we highlight the 20 somethings that build a unicorn tech startup. But actually, the older you are when you go to launch your business, the higher your success rate is. And so people in their 30s are much more successful than folks in their 20s. 40s is better than 30s, and own up. And I think it sort of caps in like this, they're in the mid 60s. And there's a reason for that, because that life experience, what is the quote? I didn't appreciate, or I didn't value experience till I had a little. When I was starting my firm, I didn't have experience. And so I didn't put a value on experience. I'm like, whatever, I'll figure it out. Now that I've been running a business for the last, 10 plus years, I'm like, all right, there's a lot of stuff I did not know that would have been really helpful. So don't put any pressure on yourself. This is an individual conversation. I would say, talk to some of your peers and get other, opinions and ideas about where you're at. But there's no right answer. There's no single formula for how this works. But hopefully that gives you sort of some parameters.
Really quick, excuse me, while we're talking about experience, we should plug our partner, the Externship by Amplified Planning. It's a really great program. It's called an externship because you can do it at your own pace outside of work hours, so you can still be working full time. It's an 8-week experience, gets you really hands-on experience with actual advisors, and it gets you 180 hours of the experience requirement for the CFP. So lots of wins there. So we'll put a link to their waitlist in the chat.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. The Amplified Planning program, the externship program is awesome. You'll actually get to see like advisors meeting with clients, which that's like real world experience that we all wish we got even when we were getting our CFP education. So yeah, that program is awesome. It's just a couple $100. Like definitely go sign up for that. If you are on the like, I wonder if I have enough experience, go sign up for that program. All right, probably just time for just a couple more questions. Let's see. How do solo practitioners best compete against larger firms? What advantages do solo practices have that they can highlight in their marketing pitches? So I guess I could approach this a couple of different ways. If you were on the call I had yesterday with Bob Barras, like we talked about how financial planning, I agree with Bob on this point, that financial planning is sort of evolving the way that accounting has evolved, where you end up with 4 mega national firms that are huge. They're going to be managing $1 trillion or more in AUM, and they're going to be huge. They're going to have an office in every city, every town. They're going to have their name on the side of the tallest building and on the football stadium. Like there's going to be those firms that are just huge. Then there's going to be, I don't know how many, 80 to 100 sort of more regional sized firms that really have a more of a foothold, in certain regions around the country. And then the vast majority of the industry are going to be solo practices. And so, in CPA world, I think something like 80% of CPAs are in a solo practice. And we sort of foresee that same thing. So why do I hire my CPA who is a solo or part of a smaller practice versus the big firm? I would say part of it is, it gets down in terms of differentiating, it gets down to this conversation around having a target market. Big, broad firm, they may have different niches inside of that practice, but that firm is providing a very generic offering to their clients because they have to. The only way to scale to hundreds of thousands of clients is to have a very, very tight process for delivering financial advice, which doesn't always sort of adhere to the realities of being a human. And so, when I look at, let's say like, here in Montana, we love our craft beer. I've never heard a craft brewer say, oh man, I can't believe, Budweiser still sells in Montana. I'm so afraid of like Bud Light taking out my business. They're not. Bud Light is providing this sort of generic, I would say bland flavor profile that works for a lot of people. It's sort of this, thing that a lot of folks may be interested in. And the craft brewery may be making this like really specific targeted flavor and build sort of a following of folks who really love the way they make their beers. And those folks are never switching to Bud Light, and the folks who drink Bud Light are never going to switch to this craft brewery. Like that's just the reality. So I would say really lean into your expertise, your niche, being the expert on your specific topic when you're comparing yourself to a larger firm. being able to emphasize that you're going to be the advisor, depending on what size firm you're going to build. If you want to stay solo, you're forever going to be their advisor. They're not going to get handed off to different advisors over time. That you can provide more customized solutions for your target market than maybe what a larger firm is going to be able to provide. And while I don't like to compete on price, the reality is like these big firms are not cheap. It's expensive to go work with those firms, and you may be able to have a fee model and a service model that's better aligned with your target market that lets you do it at a little bit more reasonable of a cost.
And also your clients are going to take care of some of that for you too. I've never once recommended Bud Light, but I have recommended Matt Brewery a lot. So I think there are some of that will take care of itself.
Totally agree. Okay, I'm going to try to answer this last question before we tune out. So let's see. How do I communicate the advantages of flat fee advisory services to the marketplace where most prospects are working with advisors who charge based on AUM? So I believe unless you want to be in you want to be working with folks who are very cost conscious, who are looking for the cheapest advisor. That is why some folks do flat fee, is because, flat fee of $5,000 a year is going to be cheaper than 1% AUM for a $10 million client. So if you're looking for those sort of bargain hunter cost conscious clients, it's totally fine. No shade there. Then you may be targeting clients who already have an existing AUM relationship. I really see the value of flat fee advisory services being the other 98% of Americans that are not currently being served by the AUM model. These are clients who have the majority of their net worth tied up in a small business or stock options or in real estate or other things that maybe they have the complexity and the wealth, but they can't, they don't have liquidity necessarily. I think flat fee works really well for clients who do have really variable needs. Maybe they're going to be selling a business in a couple of years, and they want to be sure that they're working with someone who isn't biased in when and how they make that decision. So I personally wouldn't approach flat fee as okay, how do I compete against the AUM folks? I mean, it's really easy to say, like, do you know how much you're paying your advisor? I've never met a consumer who knew how much they were paying their AUM advisor. They have no idea. They don't even get the percentage rate. They're not even close. I mean, keep in mind, like 80% of consumers think their financial planner is a fiduciary, and only like 17% of us are. So consumers don't know. They have no idea what they're paying. So all you have to do is show them, like, let me see your last quarterly statement. I'll show you exactly in dollars how much you're paying, and you are probably providing a more affordable solution. But you may be working with clients who have no assets, but those AUM firms won't work with them because they don't have any assets. Again, 1% of nothing, not a great business model. And so you can work with that target market in a way that they simply can't. So I do think flat fee is a wonderful tool. I would encourage you. People, we wrote the book on monthly subscriptions. People will say, like, okay, like, I want to do monthly subscriptions. And I'm like, whoa, take one step back. Who do you want to serve? If you're working with baby boomer millionaires, and just go charge AUM, it's fine. I mean, if you have the ethical dilemma against it, fine. But like, tell me the target market you want to serve, and then let's figure out what the service model is that those clients are willing to pay for, and then let's figure out the fee structure. Don't do it the other way. Don't start with fee structure and then try to plug stuff in. That is not my recommended way of trying to build a business.
Perfect. Well, I think that's all we have time for, Alan. That was amazing. I think we got a lot of great takeaways. If anyone is interested in learning more about XYPN, we will put a link in the chat for you to have a conversation with either myself or my teammate, Chris. We'll also have this recording available on our virtual events page as an on-demand event, probably today or tomorrow. So you can always come back and listen again. And Alan, thanks so much today. This is great.
Absolutely. Thanks everybody for coming and hanging out. If there's any, if I can be of any assistance, please let us know. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to Amy to learn more about XYPN.
Yes, perfect. And don't forget to fill out that survey when you exit out of Zoom. It's going to pop right up and tell us how we did and tell us what else we can talk to you about. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great Wednesday. Bye.